In Formula One, every millisecond counts. But sometimes, the greatest danger doesn't come from the track. It comes from within. In one of the most guarded garages in the sport, a rogue engineer was caught attempting to steal sensitive car data.
The world of Formula One has been stunned tonight.
Secrets that could have decided a world championship. That moment forced us to confront the uncomfortable truth.
How much are a team's secrets really worth?
Even the strongest team is only as secure as its weakest point of access.
Does the sport have a security issue?
I'm Calum Nicholas, and this is Securing the Win, where we uncover the hidden stories in Formula One and with one password, take you inside one of the sport's most secure organisations. As a mechanic, I helped build Max Verstappen's championship-winning cars. And now, as an Oracle Red Bull Racing ambassador, I'm bringing you the unheard stories that define championships. We are here in MK7 at Oracle Red Bull Racing's home in Milton Keynes. This is more than just a factory, it's a fortress. Behind these doors are the designs, the data, and the strategies that keep this team at the front of Formula One. So, unsurprisingly, it's one of the sport's most guarded and secure locations. And today, we're going to be opening its doors to you for the first time. To understand what it takes to really secure a World Championship team, we need the man who protects it all. He's been on the front line of every race, protecting against the threats that come not from rival cars, but from rival codes and rogue logins. Oracle Red Bull Racing's Chief Security Officer, Mark Hazelton.
Hi, Callum. How are you, mate?
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mark, espionage in Formula One is not completely new. Way back in 2007, we saw car secrets trading teams' hands, and that wasn't the first or the last time. We've been woken up to the fact that data and information in Formula One is not just valuable, but vulnerable. So here at Oracle Red Bull Racing, you're responsible for making sure those mistakes don't happen again. So let's start there. Where do you even begin to keep all of this secure?
Well, I joined the company 22 years ago. The world was a slightly different place back then. As you say, espionage, it's as old as there's been industry. And whilst somebody's had something they want to keep private, somebody else has wanted to know about it. So this is an ongoing thing for an awful long time. Theft of IP, loss of IP, accidental loss of IP, etc., can mean the difference between winning and losing. My particular journey through my time here, initially I came in to implement ERP systems and CAD systems. So the first couple of years were involved in updating some of the systems, and back then espionage was not really the forefront of everybody's mind. I then moved on to manage the trackside IT environment. So your part of the world, we got some familiarity with that. And then we would see a couple of incidents occur over the years, a couple of items potentially where maybe rumours of information surfacing at the competition, etc., in relation to us, caused us to start improving our game from a security perspective. And then the world seemed to change very quickly, and it's not just espionage or information gathering between different companies anymore. It's also protection from all the other world events, your WannaCry outbreaks, your ransomware, malware, phishing attacks, common all garden fraud, etc. So there's insider risk, there's a threat of loss to the competition, but you've also got this whole challenging environment, the whole ecosystem we've got to protect against a number of different threat vectors.
Was it a little bit like, back in 2007, was that a bit of a wake-up call for all the teams about, the importance of protecting this information well? Because, back in 2007, that scandal, it kind of shook the sport a little bit. It cost $100 million. Was this sort of a wake-up to say, look, these are things that we need to do a better job of protecting?
I think it told everybody they needed to not get caught. So there's always open source information gathering that goes on across the teams. You know, we produce a product that we put on the TV in front of thousands of people, millions of people watching on the TV. And people, you know, we've had the guys standing behind the cars covering up certain elements of the car that we don't want to make too visible, etc. So you've got these areas where it's possible to obtain some information about the setup of the car from the public domain. From a private perspective, impact of events like that really set the bar higher. So it's a relatively small industry, I guess, in terms of numbers of people. So there's a lot of movement between the teams over the years. So defining data loss can be quite difficult.
Yeah.
We've not been able to develop the Men in Black style neuralyzer that we can use on a team member when they leave to go and further their career, perhaps with the competition. So
That would be handy, though.
absolutely, I think there are probably limitations on its use, but hey, but that's part of the problem. So some of the things that are highly secretive, they're in people's heads.
Yep.
It's not just geometry and complex mathematics and so on. It can be as simple as different types of materials. It can be different processes that we're using. The performance benefit may be from a particular way that we do something, in that we can accelerate the manufacture or test of a component, etc.
I mean, I'm plenty familiar with trying to hide the IP in a physical sense. In fact, one of my favorite games on a race weekend was on the grid on a Sunday morning, where we'd see other members of other teams come and look at our car on the grid, and we'd just go and stand in front of them, hide the aero. It was one of my favorite games. But the challenge today of keeping that IP safe is very different. You know, like back then in 2007, it was physical folders and documents walking out of buildings or wherever. Now you're talking about terabytes of data traveling at ridiculous speeds across 24 Grand Prix and, you know, thousands of devices. So how do you even begin to keep up with it all?
It's a real challenge. I think at last count, every 7 days we're generating something like 2 billion data points. A data point being a movement and interaction on the network here in some manner. We have most security people will be familiar with the concept of an onion. You've got multiple rings protecting multiple layers. So you define what's really sensitive, and you concentrate on those really sensitive areas. Other areas you may be able to be more relaxed. Ultimately, what we would really ideally like to do is sort of ring fence the whole lot and have a secure set of walls and keep the data inside. We don't get that luxury, so we have to make sure that the communications are encrypted,
Yep.
for example, and we have to make sure that our devices are. We may occasionally lose a device. Somebody leaves a laptop on a train or a plane. I mean, you know more about the movements of the race team than I do these days. Back when I was running the race team IT function, I had somebody in the air pretty much 24/7. So the opportunity we used to synchronise data back then using lacy drives. We didn't have the high-speed communications that we have today. So you'd be mastering data at the factory, then at the track.
Yep.
Then it'd often go from a track to a test event back to factory, and you'd have this movement of what I used to think of as structured, unstructured data. It's a real challenge. Challenge.
Is it like a case of, like, are you constantly fighting fires, or is it, you know, like one of the things that we always say is, you know, in the racetrack is prevention's better than a cure. And one of the other things that we always used to live by is that if you leave any room for something to go wrong, it will, and it will go wrong at the worst possible time. Is that a philosophy that you translate into your role?
It has similarities. We really, to do security well, you have to do the boring bits.
Yep.
So much like the car itself, you do all the preventative maintenance. After a race, you'll strip the car, make sure things aren't cracked and broken,
Yep.
etc. Similar game. So we have to make sure that all of our computers are patched and up to date. We have to make sure that we know what rules are on our firewalls, etc. We have to know what transactions are occurring on the network. All of the software applications have to be up to date. We have to know who's on the network, who's using it for what and when. So from that perspective, if you get the basics all right, hopefully you don't get the excitement.
Yep.
Sadly, that sort of translates into 97% boredom, 3% sheer terror from a reality perspective.
Something you go home and you have bad dreams about.
Maybe in the past, not so much now. We've got to a point where we're reasonably good at what we do. We're a relatively mature organisation from a security perspective. We have lots of partners,
Yeah.
and those rings of the onion are proving to be quite effective. The one thing that we do always keep in back of mind is that we don't know what we don't know. So we're regularly testing the environment to see, are there holes that we're not familiar with?
Yeah.
Are there opportunities that can be exploited for either to exploit insider risk problems, to take data
Yeah.
that we can't identify, to bring data in from the competition. So one of those things with these big events that have shocked the world, you know, one of the things that all of the teams do now is they really defend against people accidentally bringing content from a previous employer.
Yeah.
So those things can potentially happen for a number of reasons. So we're defending against. I say we really have two sorts of real threats. We have everybody inside the building and everybody outside of the building, and other than that, I'm quite comfortable with who's around. You know.
Yeah.
So we're protecting against content coming in. We're trying to protect against content going out. We're trying to protect against people just trying to break the systems.
Yeah.
So for fraudulent purposes, for malicious purposes, and financial gain.
And I suppose, look, you know, Formula One, and when we look at that cost of 100 million back in 2007, and we're here in 2025, and it makes Formula One this huge target, no?
Absolutely.
It's a big draw for anybody who wants to hack systems and gain information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's try and put digital theft in context. What happens if a mid-season upgrade is sort of snapped up and available to another team before it gets the chance to hit the circuit?
It's an interesting question, and I think it depends really on what the upgrade is. So from a non-engineering perspective, I sort of believe most of the other teams could have most of our designs.
Okay.
And unless they know how the rear differential's working, why we run a particular ride height, why we've got a particular setup for suspension and so on, the car simply won't perform.
No, obviously it needs context, you know, and the other bits to go with it. But I suppose giving even those smallest bits of information away just gives you another step, you know, as a rival. It gives them another opportunity to try and work out the way you're doing things.
Absolutely, and there are some very, very small things that are very easy to transmit to a friend in the competition or whatever that would be very difficult to detect. Things maybe not so much now, but over recent years, things like fuel loads.
Yeah.
And tyre pressures and simple things that you could send in a text that can have a really significant impact.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the current generation of cars. Your tyre pressures are a huge bit of data that you need to keep to yourselves.
780 pages of design files were stolen from the team. The reason they didn't end up in the wrong hands? A race fan at the copy shop noticed the team's logo.
The team has announced it has presented a case against the engineer with the Modena Tribunal concerning the theft of technical information.
An internal investigation has detected suspicious activity, powder found in the engineer's pockets and around the car. They suspect a sabotage attempt.
How is the sport handling the sudden realization that IP theft and sabotage are real threats?
And look, as you sort of alluded to earlier, it's not just hackers from the outside. You know, sometimes our greatest threat can be the one from inside the building. How do you go about dealing with that? And sort of, you have this responsibility to make sure people have the information they need, but not necessarily any information that they don't need.
Yeah, and again, that is a real challenge. We've over the 22 years I've been here, we've tidied up our approach to that year on year. Many years ago, we would have had a very, very open, broad. Once you're in the building, you had access to all the data. So we would have had scenarios in the past, and I'm sure it'll resonate with you when I say we allowed our van drivers access to drawing data for components. And the reason we did that was because when you needed a front wing in Monaco and it was still being built here on a Thursday night, it goes to one of our van drivers and they look at the fittings and say, these are the wrong inserts.
Yeah.
And they'll go and look at the drawings and go and correct the components. So we've benefited massively from a broad access to data.
Yeah.
As we've grown, I mean, back then we were probably 400 or 500 people. Today, with many times the number, the need to know has become much narrower.
Yeah.
And we also have complex digital boundaries between business units, which we need to be wary of and maintain. And that I guess is quite a natural evolution over time. So the one thing that many of our engineers and staff in general in Formula One, you tend to operate behind closed doors.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a bit of a talking about how we employ security solutions is a bit anathema to me. We don't talk about it in general, and we certainly don't ever want it recorded and put on a podcast.
No, for sure.
But,
Again, this is another one of those things I can relate. I know when you're doing like certain types of training in here, part of that training is to not talk about the fact that you have this training.
Yeah, first rule of Fight Club, isn't it?
There you go.
Exactly, yeah.
And the second, I think. So, Mark, like racing, and the regulations that we have for the racing that we have now, they're constantly evolving. And I assume that as those change year on year, your security protocols and your procedures have to evolve with them. And what does that look like? Is it sort of you set boundaries as to when you're going to upgrade systems, or you wait for the latest technology to be available and you roll it out as you can?
It's quite a complicated area. So yes, you're right. We, as an organisation, we've never really been heavily regulated, with the exception of generic business regulations. The General Data Protection Act, for example, those things had a significant impact on the business, the amount of training you've got to do and those sorts of things. We don't have to comply with any specific regulations with regards to cybersecurity specifically, other than those that we bring upon ourselves. So we align ourselves with ISO 27001. We use the CIS 18, and we use the latest NCSC cyber assessment framework, etc., to give ourselves a baseline. But over the years, the regulations that are brought upon us by the FIA have changed significantly. So governance around how we're able to operate different business units, for example, have had quite a significant impact on the way that we configure the system. So where, for example, we had that broadly open and available system from a data access perspective, we've had to put in Chinese walls between the different divisions for various reasons. There's new regulations coming all the time, which mean we have to constantly tighten up. And things like the EU Data Act, EU Data Access Act and the UK Data Access Act, those things are going to have implications going forward, where we're producing anything that records data that must be accessible to individuals, so you've got to make it freely available, etc. And then on top of that, you've got the things that aren't actually regulatory, but it's where the bad guys are going to compromise you if you don't follow best practice. So if you leave your computer systems vulnerable to attack from the outside world, somebody's going to come knocking on the door.
Absolutely.
And whereas 20 years ago it might have been to leave a funny message around them having gained access, these days it's going to be, we've stolen your data, we're publishing it, or we're going to damage your systems, we're going to stop a race, or whatever exactly. So there's a number of different reasons that we have to stay on top of things. We're all racers, and whilst some of us are involved at the digital end, you guys will have been involved with the nuts and bolts. Everybody in the organisation's there to make the car go faster one way or another. So when we were deploying new systems to make things work faster and make more data available and and all of those good things, improve collaboration speed and this sort of thing. That's one way of making the car go faster. Having to tighten everything down, restrict systems, make them invulnerable to the outside world, etc. That's a hard sell on making the car go faster.
Yeah.
What I have said to people to try and ease the pain is, we're trying to protect your bonuses.
Yeah.
We're trying to protect the race position finishes, etc. What we can't really do is have an impact on trackside environment. So we have opportunities throughout the year where we can shut down en masse and patch systems and the guys in our infrastructure and service desks. The F1 shutdown, the F1 holiday that everybody talks about, is anything but for the majority of people in IT.
I can imagine.
So 2 weeks of absolute flat out work, making sure things are up to date. Beyond that, the culture has shifted significantly over the years, where we used to have trouble getting shutdown windows for upgrading systems, etc. And indeed, every time you did an update, something would break. It's not quite like that now. So we've got much more regular cadence with patching, etc.
Yeah.
We're much better at keeping computer systems up to date and so on, whereas it would have been a hard sell historically to do that to the business. Today we get really, really good support across the business for doing that.
And what about the individuals? I think you touched on it a second ago, but is there ever a bit of resistance? Now, I know as a mechanic, we have this old thing as I don't like change, right? And certainly that's something that you hear a lot. Is there often a great deal of friction in getting people to adopt these new systems and embrace the culture that you're trying to, make people have and sort of, because for me, I think specifically about VPNs, right? So I remember the old system when I first started here, where you had a code generator that you'd have to copy the code into your VPN and connect and do all of this stuff. And then I remember when we first started rolling out the systems that we have now, and everyone being like, oh God, we've got something new to learn. And in that occasion, it took a week before we all realized that actually this is way quicker. This is way more productive for us and there's way less effort.
Yeah.
Is that something that you see a lot?
Yes. Everybody hates change.
Yeah.
Nobody wants anything new.
Absolutely.
No, it's we have to focus on making things fluid and smooth where we can. So we can't introduce any downtime. Our engineers are laser focused on what they're doing, etc. We try not to get in the way. So any time we do something, we try and make something easier. Yeah. So in those days, every application you went into, you'd have had to put a new password into, a different password for everything and so on. These days, much less friction.
Okay.
So VPN, you fire your laptop up, it connects to the internet, it's always on, it's available to do downloads and all those things. So those things we're constantly improving, and that's where things like 1Password come along and help us with things like that. So from your perspective, that would have been a little bit of a challenge. From a high-performance compute engineers and developers' perspective, that sort of thing's an absolute nightmare, because they're having to put those passwords in and refresh those logins constantly throughout the day. So reducing that friction is a constant constantly in back of mind. So we try not to introduce anything that's going to introduce any conflict, and it's been a challenge, because historically every time you changed something would break.
Yeah.
Back in the early days with previous telemetry systems that we've run, for example, they were utilising undocumented features of the boards on the laptops, for example. So any change to any of the software or any change to any of the hardware, if we couldn't buy a batch of laptops out of a particular motherboard,
that's it.
It's not going to work. And these things were that sensitive. We're now at a point where we can do real-time upgrades and patching and so on, and there's a lot less reluctance. I've encouraged that over the years by telling everybody that these bad guys are just after their digits off their credit cards. Yeah. So everybody wants to protect their own bank accounts, etc.
You've got to give some people some personal motivation as well.
Exactly. So if we could, we offer up things and we explain things in terms that the folks can use at home as well. So everybody wants to keep their kids safe, everybody wants to keep their granny safe, etc., and they might not be computer literate, etc. If we can offer up some of that technology that makes those things easier and more consumable, then that definitely helps.
Amazing. And like, you know, we talk about, you know, as a business, as a culture, we will find a performance gain in any area whenever we can. And it's the same thing. And I know, you know, you try and do these things in the background, but ultimately those delays for personnel logging in or getting access to network, those are real-time delays. You know, if an engineer needs to give you some data right now and he can't log in, and you're making that a lot quicker and seamless, hopefully.
That's the ambition.
That's the goal.
We don't always get it absolutely right, but I think the other element of it is where we do get it wrong.
Yeah.
Hold your hands up, and we try not to make the same mistake. Just like on the race team, you try not to make the same mistakes twice, etc. We also will, when we're talking about doing updates and those sorts of things, there's an element of us that says we would rather get fired for doing something rather than getting fired for not doing it.
Okay.
So, do you want the outage caused by something that we've done that's trying to protect us from the bad guys?
And that's within your control?
Or do we want the bad guys coming knocking on the door?
Yeah.
You don't want the bad guys knocking on the door these days. We're seeing that at the moment playing out in real time with in industry constantly, and bad things can happen.
I was going to say, is it a constant thing of all day long, every day, you see these threats, you know, and some of them might be small threats, some of them larger, but is it just a constant barrage of...
Our biggest threat from an external perspective is the broader attacks. So we generally don't have... We're generally not targeted as an organisation.
Okay.
So whilst there's constant background noise, programmatic noise, a lot of it. So all of the systems are constantly being probed to see if there's an open door, an open port, a vulnerability, etc. That is a constant that we live with today. So I think any computer connected to the internet these days, it's a matter of seconds before it's being probed by some automated system for nefarious purposes. So yes, we are constantly seeing some noise. We're fairly regularly seeing the results of fraudulent activity. So supplier compromises, for example, injection into invoice threads, payment threads, and those sorts of things. That's a fairly constant topic. So yes, there's always something going on. Yeah. The level of expertise and precision in how they're targeted, generally we're seeing the sort of blunderbuss approach.
Nice. Now, I wanted to touch a little bit on sort of security culture. You know, you spoke about you know, getting people to sort of embrace these systems and the things that we use to keep us secure and to keep all of our data safe. How do you get a team of thousands of people to all like buy into this? You know, you've got from mechanics to engineers, the drivers, marketing, comms. How do you get all of these thousands of people to essentially live this day in, day out?
I don't, they do. Having evolved from a relatively small team to quite a big team today, the main thing that I've done is I've tried to encourage everybody to be on my team. So everybody that works here has some aspect of security about their daily life, and encourages everybody around them, hopefully. And I think the knowledge, the need to be inherently secure, it's just pervasive throughout Formula One and the staff that come in here. From that perspective, I haven't had to do an awful lot. So we do every now and then. We tweak things a little bit. We'll put some guidance out there. We'll say this is how you can protect your kids. You know, this is how you can put a filter on your internet connection at home to stop them seeing bad things. And is that why you do this? Is this why you stop us getting on Facebook? And you sort of do this correlation
But it's the
between
way to relate.
what they want to do at home, and so they all want to be totally secure at home, but they all want complete freedom in the factory.
Yeah.
So we would put some little tweaks in there like that. We do some security awareness training and those sorts of things. And every now and then I'll walk up behind somebody's desk and stand behind them, and it makes them really nervous, and then you get this little muttering goes around, and they'll behave a little bit better for a couple of weeks.
Catch them doing the crossword online or something like that.
Exactly, yeah, that's definitely verboten.
Oh, right, okay. I've never done that.
Now, I think nature of the beast is we're, from a security perspective, we do allow a huge amount of flexibility because people can be in the factory for 12, 14 hours, you know. Some guys are doing 7-day weeks. You can be getting off an aeroplane, coming straight into the factory to do turnaround, only to find that the truck with all the parts on is stuck in France, and so on. So you've got a factory full of people that haven't actually got anything to be working on.
Yeah.
So I've had scenarios where VIPs have been walking around and everybody's been playing cards and mahjong and so on. But it's give and take. Those guys are going to be here till 4 o'clock the following morning.
Yeah.
So I think you're touching on things that have had impact. I think one of the most impactful things we ever did was early on when I transitioned to take over the cybersecurity role in itself. And that was to remove the iTunes libraries from the race team guys. And that was a very, very unpopular move.
It was a very unpopular move.
But it showed whether the board were going to take it seriously and back me.
Yeah.
The service desk at the time would be 40% of their time was when they were doing upgrades, was just managing the iTunes libraries.
Okay.
Etc. And you could hide masses of transactions in iTunes libraries when the files have been moved around. So, you know, if you wanted to do something really naughty, you could rename a file to look like an MP3 or an MP4, bury them that way. And how are you going to see it when you've got a library of tens of thousands of files? So removing that when I think at the time the guys were spending about 270 days a year. This was when we were going from race to test to race to test, and the calendar was even more challenging. We've got more race events today, but much less testing.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, for me, I can't imagine what it would have liked to have been a mechanic in Formula One with unrestricted testing. I feel like I dodged that bullet. So essentially, that culture of security, it's training, reinforcement, relation to the way that they operate in their daily lives. Those are all the things that help everyone sort of stay on the same page and keep everything safe.
Absolutely. There's no rocket science. Much of it is about the basics.
Yeah.
It's about removing friction where we can.
Yeah.
And ultimately everybody's here to get on with their particular jobs. They want to have security in the somewhere, not quite back of mind, but probably not front of mind either.
Yeah.
We need to help them to protect them from themselves. We also need to be mindful of the fact that things are going to happen, whether it be their mistakes or deliberate. You know, it's.
But we want security culture to be essentially second nature. Like when I think about pit stops, I often say that the actual, the movements and the physicality of a pit stop weren't a thought in my mind. After a while they just become second nature, and that's what makes it work. But the thing that we still do work on is focus and attention and all of those things, and those are the things you have to stay on top of. Nice. So the other thing that we would do with the pit crew in particular was that we would train so many different situations in order to try and find where we might fall flat. To find out those weak points in our own sort of processes and procedures. Those are the things that we would, especially pre-season, we'd spend a lot of time focusing on and seeing if there were ways that we could influence it to make it go wrong. Is that something that you do with your own system? You probe your own system constantly, or?
Yeah, we have external vulnerability assessments being run repeatedly.
Okay.
And then occasionally we'll bring in an organisation and plug them into the network and say, tell us what's bad.
Yeah.
If you can find anything. We'll run all sorts of little exercises. So crisis management exercises. I'll charge into the office. This has happened. How are you going to respond? What's going to happen next? and introduce those things. There's toolboxes of things that can help there from the National Cybersecurity Centre, etc. Did a lot of work on their product offering, Exercise in a Box, years ago to help them productionise that. And from an organisational perspective, we do exactly the same as well from a business continuity and crisis management perspective. I remember trying to introduce a zombie apocalypse type scenario in the design office years ago, and everybody laughed at me saying it was ridiculous. The idea was we were going to get people to pile up the stairs, and anybody in the DO that was within range couldn't work anymore. What do we do if the DO's not there from a business continuity perspective? And I think that was about a year before COVID. So it could potentially have been a good bit of practice.
Yeah, like a pre-run.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we're very open to. We don't know what we don't know, and we can only test those things by bringing in other people, other organisations. Sometimes getting some of the apprentices to say, ask us questions about these things. We've always done these things in a particular way.
Yeah. Don't
necessarily know why we do them that way anymore. So when these folks come in and ask us these questions that may seem a bit of a straightforward answer, often that can surface things that cause us to change the way that we do things. So it's constant evolution.
And I suppose, an outsider's perspective is always going to highlight things that, you wouldn't consider doing it every day.
Exactly.
Right, I want to talk just briefly, about the human factor in cybersecurity, because, we talk about the external threats, we talk about the technology and the data. Ultimately, it is people that are your, first and last line of security, no?
They're our best defence and our worst weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we're saying, is that essentially, having all of this tech is great, but it's up to people to use it well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can there's an old saying that you can cure any disease by killing the patient. So you could apply copious amounts of security, stop the job.
Yeah.
We're about making the car go faster. We're about enabling the engineers to do their engineering and make the wind tunnels run and so on, and get the components to the circuit. If people ask what we're good at as an organisation, I've always thought it's logistics.
Okay.
And actually just getting the parts made. So manufacturing components, getting them made, getting them to the circuit at the right time, at the right place, and risk management. So we're going to have to fast track the development of some of those parts, etc. So those things can be done at a bit of a rush. Sometimes we have to take risks to do it. Could be from a security perspective. Could be a new supplier we haven't dealt with before, for example, that we need to get capacity with, that we've just got to get those components out.
Yeah.
They've got all the 3D geometry. Do we trust them? Somebody could be working on a laptop in a airport, leave the laptop unlocked and walk away from it. These things are possible, and given the sheer volume of transactions with people, the amount of flights and movement of people and things and parts and components, stuff happens. So we have to hedge our bets to make sure, the thing that all the mechanics hated around the screens locking on the computers, for example,
is a real pain in the arse.
Is a real pain in the arse. Just go and hit the button every 15 minutes and stop it.
Or if you find something that vibrates on your desk, you just put it next to your mouse, and then it's fine.
Yeah. Those are the things that laptop left on a train, for example. It would be better if it locked after 30 seconds. But that would be a real pain. So you've got to have all of these trade-offs, and sometimes something might happen, and you've got to be able to deal with it somehow.
Okay, so we say about those, those zero trust is sort of built into some of the systems that we use, but like you said, what happens when that human factor breaks down?
It depends on the scenario.
Okay.
You've got to. We've got to be able to respond, because I remember early on in pre Formula One motorsport experience, I worked for champ car manufacturer, and we had our biggest competitor at the time was down on the south coast, and we had an engineer that worked down on the south coast, and this is in the days of fax machines, and we faxed some 2D geometry down to him. Faxed. Familiar with fax machines?
I am. I do know what a fax machine is.
Just checking.
For the record.
We faxed some design data down to him.
Yep.
And the person that was operating the fax got one digit wrong, and it came out on the competitor's fax machine.
No.
And it was just one of those crazy things. Absolutely not deliberate. Absolutely not deliberate, but if something, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong.
Yep.
And just given the sheer volume of things that are going on, things happen. And they on the face of them, some of them can be quite obscure, quite unnerving at the time. We've had people that have been in touch saying, I was on the phone to the tax office and I'm expecting an email from them. But before I'd put the phone down, I'd had an email from the tax office and it seemed slightly too quick. And it was entirely coincidental, but it happens. Somebody years ago, no longer with us, bless him, scanned 3 documents on one of our Xerox scanners, printer scanners, and received 4 emails. And he'd opened 3. When he came to the 4th one, he thought that I only did 3, and it was a very malicious 0-day piece of software that could have caused quite considerable damage. And it was just that, had it been moments earlier in the chain, he'd probably have opened it thinking he'd scanned 3. So we see all of those sorts of things. So yes, you can build in multiple levels of controls. At some point, things are going to go wrong.
We've sort of circled 2007 throughout the episode, so we'll try and close the loop. Is there something that you can pinpoint that changed as a result of that incident? Something that sort of was the key to teams feeling like they could stop this happening again?
I think ever having confidence that you can entirely prevent these things would be foolish.
Yep.
I think having those multiple layers is a must.
Yeah.
I think things will happen. We have to make it difficult for those things to happen. We have to improve the likelihood of detection. We have to reduce the potential benefit to the individual of it happening.
Yep.
So why are they doing it? What are they hoping to gain?
Yep.
And in those instances, what do you have to lose when you're caught? So, it's not all electronic controls that you can put in place. Some of them are logical and so on. And if the risks of doing it outweigh the benefits of doing it, then people are less likely to do it. I won't say they won't do it, but hopefully we can reduce the frequency and so on. Yeah.
I mean, look, when I think about it, we always talk about the money of that in 2007, and fine was like $100 million. Obviously, that makes Formula One big gain, but it's not just about that, is it? It's about the tents on track. We're all here working to, all these people, thousands and thousands of hours of intellectual property to try and make the car even the smallest amount.
Yeah, fractions of a second costing millions.
Yeah, and that's it. And before you know it, there's a rumour spreading around the paddock at this or that about something Max has found half a second in Eau Rouge or this, that or the other. And is that something that you see a lot of and think, I wonder if that's actually real information or if it is just a rumour?
We've seen a number of interesting challenges over the years, shall we say. And it tends to be no smoke without fire. I think when the rumour gains enough momentum and you're hearing the same thing from enough people, there's normally something behind it. But these days with social media and so on, it's a real mixed bag. And we were told, for example, some years ago that all of our CAD geometry was available on the internet. And it was somebody that had created a 3D geometry of a car. They'd named it after our car. that was it. So everybody was absolutely convinced it's our 3D geometry that's freely available for download, etc. People are well-meaning. You know, we get a lot of people that will come and feed back to us. These things are for sale on the dark web. This is for sale on eBay. All those sorts of things go on. The rumour mill is good and bad. It's quite entertaining on occasions, but I think with the current approaches with social media and things like that mean that so much of it's rendered irrelevant.
So you're telling me that I shouldn't just have blind faith in Yuki when he tells me we've got an absolute rocket ship next year?
Wow.
Maybe some inside info.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to say that we got an absolute rocket ship for next year, but of course we plan to win.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
You know, I'd be very disappointed if we weren't aiming high.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. So let's look at 2026. An entirely new project, new car, new designs, new data, all of that. How do you protect something, all of that, that's, you know, it's future work and it's stuff that we've obviously been working towards for some time? Is it sort of the kind of thing that you want cordoned off to everyone else other than those who work on it? How do you begin to protect all of that?
Initial concept for a new car so in general everything is an evolution. We try not to do anything particularly new. We're constantly evolving, improving bit by bit. Design concepts for a new car will be kept to a small group initially, but that small group will grow very quickly. Everybody needs to know most everything about the car, from the aerodynamicists to the guys that are doing manufacture through to the guys that are actually putting the components together. So that need to know environment's actually really, really broad. So it very quickly, everybody within these walls gets to see some element of the car, etc. It's a real challenge. Keep it really, really secret. By the way, there's the car.
So as I don't have access to that, can I assume that you're not going to give me any inside information about next year's car?
Don't really know an awful lot about next year's car, to be fair.
As part of the design?
Nobody ever wants to talk to me anymore about engineering stuff. I've been hoisted by my own petard, I'm afraid. I've got a great interest in all things engineering, hence why I've worked in motorsport for so long.
Yeah.
But these days, nobody will talk to me anymore because they think I'm going to then have to sack them.
I'm just going to keep pushing my luck and see if I can get anything out of you. So look, just give us perhaps a little insight in where you see our protections going forward. Are there things that you have, like, obviously I don't know, you don't want to give us the specifics, but things that you've got in the pipeline or tools that we're looking at or utilising to go forward and move forward and make our protection even better?
We can't afford to stand still. So if you're standing still, you're going backwards.
That is true,
as they say. There's a couple of things with 1Password in itself. We're doing more single sign-on. We've got a lot of the developer secret type stuff going on to remove that stiction that we're talking about, the friction in everybody going about their daily jobs. And as part of that solution, we're looking at managing the unmanaged apps that are evolving and being used. So not specifically bring your own device type solutions necessarily, but the thousands of things that are on the internet. So we try and restrict access to brand new, to known bad websites. Yeah. We also pivoted a few years ago to stop access to unknown websites. So an unknown website could be something that's been spun up very recently and used for malicious purposes. The known bad, everybody knows that the known bad is blocked, and the criminals stopped using them. They started using grey websites. So we block access to those. However, they're appearing at such a frequency. How do we know what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent? So there's mechanisms within 1Password that we're looking at utilising to give us more visibility into what's perhaps a little bit hidden because it's just millions and millions and millions of transactions across the internet. In terms of the things that are changing massively, I think the really big shifts are going to be quantum at some point in the future. Quantum computing mixed with AI, who knows what that's going to bring. We're regulated, we have to budget for the things that we're spending our money on, etc. The bad guys don't. It's a lot more flexible for them. They can just go out and try these things, and they can just iterate through things and keep trying. They've only got to get it right once. We've got to get it right all the time to prevent them getting in. So there's a constant chain of evolution.
Yeah, and you said it already, but I was going to touch on it. The space for AI in your world. Is it a useful tool? Is it something that we're getting towards you being able to really sort of trust and utilise it to keep us all protected?
It's AI. So as an organisation, we've used advanced mathematics in compute for years and years, as you know. So from the Monte Carlo simulations through to the various different analytic techniques in machine learning that we use, etc. AI is another branch there. It's coming thick and fast. Early on, there's lots of noise. Everybody saying, it's going to replace all our jobs and so on. I don't see that being the case. I think it's going to be a tool that some people are going to find really useful. Is it going to completely revolutionise everything the way that people fear? I don't think so. Is it going to be something that becomes part of your daily life and useful in many areas of avenues of your life? Yes, absolutely.
Nice. Well, Mark, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we've covered a lot, everything from how you work to keep our secrets safe to the future and all of the things that we're expecting and the tools that are available. So I just want to thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.